Today I'm going to be talking about light and shadow and how they will help make the drawings better. Actually, a lot better. At least in my experience, light and shadow are like at the top of things that contribute to making my drawings that much better. The video is going to be a little bit longer than my usual shorts, which are like a few minutes. It will have more details that actually will help you a lot more in making your drawings just look better. Okay, let's go. A shadow is that where light coming from that side, it's blocked off by this object. Shadow is actually been always been there. It's just that we don't see it as a shape, and we only see it because the area outside of it is lit up. Knowing that, then we can manipulate the two to our advantage in our drawing. A lot of drawings I see seem to do this a lot, and they will draw like shadow, right? A little bit of shadow. I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit of shadow here. They will draw shadow here, maybe a little bit, right? They draw this shadow here, and that's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with drawing shadows. Only a little bit of shadow. Lighting can look like that in real life. Not every. Some places can be well lit, and then you have only a little bit of shadow. And a lot of times you see anime, manga, and comics. Even they can have situations like this where they use really simple shadow, right? And us trying to learn it from that, trying to copy that style into our drawing, meaning we may not even know all the other ways of drawing shadows, right? Or how shadows and lights actually work in real life. For example, I think of shadows as a unified shadow and lighting as a unified thing across the whole figure and across the whole drawing. If there's multiple figures and things in it, it'll be across multiple things, right? Shadow can be affecting the figure more. For example, here I have chosen to indicate light. It's coming from this side, a little bit in front of him, but from the side, right? So his face here, technically, it will be in shadow a little bit on the side because the light is not able to hit it, right? It's blocked off, and here it's blocked off by the head. You can think of the head as an object in a sense. It's blocking the light off. If there's not much light on this side pointing towards the figure, then it will be in shadow also, right? Here, I mean, see, we can have folding, we can have shadow mixed in with the folding because inside of folding there's less lights able to go in because it's deeper, and so the lights cannot go into the cracks of the folding. Basically, I mean not cracks, but the inside of the folding. So that means we can create really interesting shadows to look at on our figure, because instead of just the shadow that's tiny bit on the arm here, you see how I have done here? I have extended that. I have increased the effect of the shadow, so it's a more incorporated into the figure. I'm trying to make this to illustrate my point, so I have to exaggerate it. I want you to understand how shadow is used to enhance the drawing. And for example, we can have a shadow even here, right? This whole area can just be in shadow as well. Do you know why? Because the light is, first of all, the light is closer to the upper part of the body. So the upper part of the body, it's going to catch the light, whereas the bottom part may or may not. Like here, right? Because the arm here, it's on top of it. The shadow is not able to penetrate the arm, so that's why there's a shadow also, right? Do you see these shadows I'm adding? And it's unified in a way that it's not affecting tiny areas. We want shadow to be applied throughout the body. Even, for example, if there's a knee here, right? There's a bump on it, which means this area can catch more light than this area where it's on the side may not catch as light as much, and then just less of it, right? And we can just, I'm just trying to make it darker so you can see where shadows can be across the body, right? Not on a tiny area. Now there are times when we do that. We make shadows small and concentrate in small areas. But we also want to understand how shadow actually looks in many situations. Okay? There's a cast shadow by the jacket here because the light's not able to penetrate the jacket. The light from here. And areas like under the nose, we want to put shadow there, right? Because the nose is mostly well lit in most situations because the nose, again, sits higher on the face, on the surface. It's a bump, right? So light's able to hit it most of the time, which is why most of the time you have shadow under the nose. In many drawings, you see that. There's a reason for that, right? It looks better when the light's hitting from top rather than bottom. You can do much more than this. Like, for example, this folding here, you can have shadow under the folding here, right? That's just how much you are willing to go and what effects you want to achieve. No one makes that decision for you other than you. You can settle for less, or you can try to go for something else that's more like more work to do, I guess, and it involves more thinking because you do have to think where the shadow needs to be, like where you want the shadows to be, and what kind of facts is how is it going to affect your drawing, right? So this is just a really basic ideas on how to apply shadows to a human figure or animals or objects. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But this one, I just want to concentrate on unifying shadow on anything. Okay, unifying it. For example, you want this to be in shadow, this line here on the side, because the light's coming from this side. Well, it doesn't need to be black like what I have. It just needs to have some kind of shadow effect on that, right? Shadow against shadow. I mean, how dark it needs to be, that's one other thing, but I just want to indicate shadow on this side, right? Shadow here, okay? Because the light's not going to be able to hit these areas as much as it hits the other side, right? Things like that. And actually, this whole thing can be in shadow in here in this area, right? And these foldings can have shadows, and it just depends on what the effects you want to achieve. But whatever you decide to do, you have to make it consistent. These are not rules that we're following. These are just simple guides, like simple ideas that are meant to be actually broken. But you can't do that until you have mastered or at least learn the basics on how to use lights and shadow. Okay? Well, sometimes people draw, or I shouldn't say people, I should say styles, certain drawing styles. We may fill up the shadow like totally black, you know what I mean? Just a black shadow. You see that in like comics a lot also. Like they will just fill up the shadow. Like there's no like no cross hatching or anything. Just black. That's one way to do it, of course, right? But when you want to use other ways to draw, right? Not everybody likes to draw like that, right? And you can draw shadows. For example, let's say we put a shadow under here, right? You can draw it, if you draw lines like this, right? Sure, that's a shadow, right? You can see there's a shadow. The most beneficial way of drawing shadows, you want to follow the form, whatever you're drawing the shadow on, right? You want to draw the form because this neck is a wang. Now, the neck like this, you do not, you can technically draw a shadow with lights going up like this, but it doesn't tell much about the surface because we know this neck is going up like this, right? We know it's going up, but in between here, is it flat? No, it's wang. The neck, it's wang. This is, the one way you want to portray shadow. Maybe even with this, right? Let's say there's a shadow here, like black, but then I will add lines like this going around it, right? It could be an addition to other things. Or here, look at this. These lines actually describe the surface. There's a surface that's going this way. I'm showing you that surface. It wangs like up from here to there. As far as these shadows, what I like to do sometimes is I may not use these wanged lines, but I will use lines that follow in a general direction of the form. We can draw shadows with wang lines, like lines that describe the form that goes one, like imagine this line like more curved, but I could draw that instead. Also describes these lines are straight, but also describes the form, right? Because a lake is pretty much a box-shaped item, right? That's the inside. You can see that this is the surface. That's just like the other side of it, like this side of it, on the back side. So these lines, the reason I draw them that way is because, right, I describe this area that is the back of the lake. This is like, imagine this is a line going here. This line here, it's the same as this line here, right? A shadow can just be like this. Same here. They can just be like this, depending on how you want to portray the character. Another thing is, you might use cross hatching to draw shadows, right? You can mix it up, right? Like this. But again, the lines, the direction of the lines still matters. Less so because it's a cross hatching attempt, but you still do not want to do something weird like with the direction of the lines. You see how I'm drawing up, mixed with these lines going to that direction. The lines going this way and the line going this way. It creates a pattern where this here, it's this. I'm trying to tell you this. I do not draw a shadow like this on an area like this because that tells me nothing about his body, but also, I forgot to mention, because he's wearing something, right? Folding. That here does not contain any information of how the folding, how it's folding, or how the body is shaped here. Whereas drawing this tells me, describes the surface a little bit more, okay? Which is why direction of lines matter all the time. They're way important, okay? I'll give you a very important lesson here. Imagine this. We have line weight, right? That means we have variation of how thick the lines are and how thin they are, right? Imagine this is actually one line, right? black area shadow, that's one line. Now, does it matter how we draw that line? Of course it matters, right? We draw from up to down. From imagine that line going like this, right? It matters. Instead, if you draw the shadow like this, the lines going like this, I mean, it's still fine, but there's a difference, right? There's a difference between the look. Like you draw the lines like this. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong, or I'm not saying that's the right way to do it and this is the wrong way to do it. In most situations, I like that better because it's simpler to do. So when we draw with variation of lines, right? Thin, and then put pressure on it, becomes thicker and darker. Whether you use a pencil or ballpoint pen or this kind of ink, doesn't matter. It will have the same similar effect as you draw lines. You put more pressure on it to have to create variation of line quality. I often think about where light is coming from, and for some reason, I like to have it on the left side. By the way, let me just comb my better hair. Could have a better hair day, but this in this drawing is from the left side, and as you can see, I use thicker lines and thinner lines throughout the drawing. I try my best when the lines are facing directly, facing like the shoulder area, right? The clothing is, the lines are thinner, just thinner because I take into the account of the lighting, and I make lines darker, like here, right? While one, there's some kind of tension around there, but then also some shadow is going to be there. Now this here, I consider it mostly line art. I'm not really rendering the shadow on it. You just see darker area because I used a variation of lines. Okay, like here. Now that's, I guess that's a little shadow, but it's basically that's it. And this here is not a shadow. It's because I use lines that are intend to be thicker, but I just can't with this. This is a way of thing, a pen that it doesn't create big marks like that easily. But as you can see, I use see these whenever it's phasing these lights coming from there. I try to make the lines thinner, and you can see this here. Even though the light's coming from here and this is thicker, it's because that part of it, it's under. We have the main part of the pens, but then that part of it's under. It's like under the pens from our perspective. It's, I'm drawing it that's not facing us directly. That's like the shadowy part of the pens, and here you see this darker because it's folded in, and the lights would hit areas where, like here, making that actually darker, like maybe a little bit shadow there. I'm doing my best to guess, educated guess on how the light would be landing on any of these surfaces. And you can see I already make this darker here, and then here lighting, the lines are including the lighting in it. When I say including the lighting, I mean I'm talking about doing my best when I can to include lighting information onto the line, so it's thinner here. Even broken lines, it's because lighting is coming from there. A lot of times, I also take into consideration with like these strong marks, depending on the tension of the clothing or the body, the muscle, the movement of it. But at the same time, almost in all my drawings, I take into consideration of lighting, even when a character is just sitting there not doing much, right? Obviously, in this Akuma, he's moving, so there's a different idea here, because there's movement that creates these marks. Again, here See this here, darker. That's because I'm taking into consideration the light's coming from here. So I make that dark, that line, like that. It doesn't matter, but because lighting is coming from there. That, even though I'm not making a shadow, it you can look at it as a shadow. I'm in that way because it indicates the lights from that side, and like this light here, thinner, and then that's indicating where the bottom part of the muscle is. It's sort of a little bit of a drop shadow on the bottom. I do this throughout my drawings. Lighting, it's always there in almost every single drawing I do. It will help you to create better drawing because the line variation using that makes a better drawing. Now let's talk about lights that are indirectly hitting our subject. So we have light here, the strongest lights from here. And let's say we're in a room, but daylight's coming in from the windows. And so this light hits it, the less light on this side, meaning there may be some kind of shadow here, right? Because it's not able to fully line up this side. But at the same time, because we have environment light from the room, this here can create a edge light, rim light, where it's brighter. It's not too bright, not as bright as that, but it's brighter than this darker shadow here, right? It's still somewhat in the shadow, but it's a little bit brighter. I don't know if you can see the effect, but let me try to draw the shadow a little bit darker. Then you can probably see it better. There's a reason we want to do that. One, having that light by the edge of it helps us, informs us that this object is rounded. It's a round object. Okay, it helps with that, and it gives a better effect rather than, let's say we draw, rather than something that's like just like flat, where one tone on the whole on that one whole surface, then we know it looks flat. Even if a cylinder has that, it will flatten it out. Also, the reason we do this, you have to imagine, in any situation, you can have shadows on top of other. Let's say there's another things here, right? Now this thing is in. Let's say it's in shadow, right? Or in a darker. Let's say if your drawing has color, also, which complicates things. But then having this light here, a little bit of a lighter area, separates these two objects. So I have done this illustration to show lightest to darkest area. So I have tree trunks here. They're sitting on top of the rock formation right there. So again, my lights from the left side, there's little pieces, branches that will cast on to, like on the surface of this rock formation, which is why you see these patterns, right? There's these patterns, like these areas where some areas are darker, some are lighter. The light's going through the cracks of between the branches, right? There's not much blocking the light to go through, and then on the surface of these the rocks and stuff like that. And here it's much lighter because I have the lights on that side. This area is a little bit darker, and the tree casts a shadow on here. I want to show transitioning from darkest area, for example, like a darker area, and then it becomes lighter and lighter. So shadow is not one tone. It can be, darker in some areas and lighter in some areas depending on how much light goes through. Um, so so here it darkens, and then it gets a little bit brighter here because here it's under this what do you, the wine or whatever thing that is. It's just assuming it's under somewhere tucked um, in a spot where the light, the light is not going to be really affecting it much, right? I mean, sure, there's some lights in it, but compared to other areas, like way above it, right, much lighter, and then even gets lighter because see this area, much more sunlight, and same happens with the tree trunk. I think it gets darker and lighter, even though the sun is from this. I mean, let's say the sunlight, um, it's on the left side. This area doesn't mean it's going to be all dark, right? Because the sun, it's able to, the light is able to go through here. We don't know what is about this John here, right? In my mind, there's not really like leaves and stuff like that. It's just branches. So the sunlight is able to go through, and if you see this here, this little bit of highlight, uh, this part of it belongs to this tree trunk, but we see highlights on this side because the sunlight again it's able to touch some of it, right? And this is a good trick also to use to separate out this tree trunk from the rest of this background here. It's very important to be able to draw shadows going from darkest to lightest and lightest to darkest, right? Because that's a technique that we may use in some situations or some styles of drawing. Let's say he's looking at, we're drawing a guy looking at like a beer bottle or whatever, right? And maybe there's maybe more beer bottle here, right? Whatever, wine bottle or beer bottle, drinks. Okay, we just look at it as some kind of drink. Okay, let's just say there's drinks here or whatever. I don't know what they are, but he's looking at it, right? Imagine this is in the shadow. Then, for us, if this is in the shadow, then we're looking at here because it's blocking it. Let's say we want to put shadow here. We may have highlights on one side. Maybe there's a light coming from somewhere there about like somewhere illuminating this area. Like maybe there's a strong light somewhere about here pointing down a little bit. I don't know, some kind of lamp that's sitting on like a desk, right? Maybe there's a lamp. Okay, imagine there's a lamp. I'm drawing a very bad lamp, but a lamp here is a lamp. It's pointing or whatever, right? And the reason we do that is because we want to create a sense of direction to the drawing, the story we want to try to tell. Every piece of drawing tells a story. Imagine if the drawing's like bigger than that, we can have him holding like another bottle that he just took, or he just finished drinking. He's just coming to get more, right? And maybe maybe it even drips down some like wine that whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean, but we want to direct the viewer's attention to what we want to show. Okay, areas that are darker, we tend to ignore at first, at least. But we see light things that we can see better. We pay attention to that. And by blocking out, by darkening other areas, for example, putting them in shadow, it forces our mind to look at things that are not in shadow. Okay, I'm not letting your eyes to go everywhere, at least not initially, because I want you to look at things I want you to look at. In this case, you are looking at this area because that's where the focal point is, or on an object, or an area, like or here, right? Because if I create a shadow, if there's a lamp here, but then there's a desk or whatever, I create a situation. Let's say I create a situation where this area it's slightly darker, but not totally like it's just a little bit darker than the rest of the area, then I will still look at this area. But because this is not covered in shadow so much, the lighting on it, and these bottles, there's lighting on it, then I will look at these, okay? And let's say this is more in shadow, right? Even more in shadow, but a little bit of highlight. Then I'm being forced to look at things that I notice right away. And this is um, this is a really high concept that not a lot of people who draw know how to use it. With all the things we covered earlier, it leads to this. While knowing how to draw shadows and how lines work, think of them as tools or as ways, methods to tell the story in the drawing, how to portray, how to guide the viewers to look at your drawing. That's the I think that's the ultimate goal of all these. These things I have discussed here will make you a much more informed artist, and you can make better decisions knowing how lights and shadows work um, in a practical way, right? That affects your drawings. So yeah, that's what I want to share. Thank you for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts on it, and also, or you don't agree with me, if you can leave it in the comments. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.